Hello, everyone, and happy Thursday, and welcome to our second Fearless Focus in our three-part virtual series. I'm Stacy Thompson, Special Events and Account Executive here at Business Publications Corp. And if it's your first time joining us, we're really glad that you're here. As always, our team has curated a fantastic panel for discussion today covering the topic of confidence, specifically how to empower ourselves and women we know to succeed in work and life. But before we dive into our discussion today, I'd like to take a moment to share some changes and additions to our business record fearless team. As we know, sometimes being fearless can mean taking risks and making moves that can scare you a bit and ultimately drive us to grow in ways that we might not know possible. Emily Kestel, who catapulted our fearless brand as its editor since its inception in November of 2020, has made a career move to better suit her love for visual storytelling and video production. Although we'll miss Emily and her incredible fearless storytelling, we are all very excited for her new journey. On that note, I'm excited to tell you that Emily Barsky, formerly business record editor, is transitioning to a new part-time role going to grad school, also managing various projects, including Leadership of Fearless. And she was also an integral part of the launch of Fearless. So you'll keep getting the same vision and quality under her continued leadership. But right now she's off on her honeymoon, so she's not here with us today. I'm also excited to tell you that we've added a staff writer and copy editor, Nicole Grundmeyer, to our BPC team. She's a seasoned writer who has a journalism degree from Iowa State and a master's in journalism from Northwestern University. And she'll be contributing regularly to the Fearless brand as well as Business Record. And she will continue to bring us stories that inspire and empower Iowa women to succeed in work and life. And we're excited to have her join the team. Thanks, Nicole.
Hi, everyone. I am so grateful to be here.
Good deal. We're glad to have you. When we launched our Fearless brand at the end of 2020, we knew that in addition to a weekly e-newsletter and other content, we wanted to have space for conversation and connection. And our Fearless Focus virtual series was born, providing the opportunity for anyone around the state and beyond that can easily join us to be a part of the discussions. We've seen tremendous growth in our Fearless followers, 350 registered today, in fact, over the last 2 years. So we know these conversations have been powerful and they've resonated with many. Because of this, we're always looking for new ways to connect our audience. So we're excited to invite you all to join us in November for our second annual in-person Fearless event, which you'll hear more about later. Moderating today's conversation is Susanna DeBaca. Susanna is our president and CEO here at Business Publications and a fearless woman herself.
Well, thank you, Stacy, and hello, everybody. It is just a pleasure to be with you here today. And as you know, if you've been on the calls before, our goal with Fearless is to empower Iowa women to succeed in work and in life. And we do that through the power of inspiration and connection. The topic for today is confidence. And I think that's a topic that's relevant to all of us. And I'm going to start out with somewhat of an improbable quote from Blake Lively. Yes, a quote from Gossip Girl herself, who said, "The most beautiful thing you can wear is confidence." I love that quote. But unfortunately, we don't always wear our confidence. There are so many barriers in our way as women, historic, societal, systemic, family messages, that women may actually just be on a continuous journey to improving our confidence. I actually always laugh when people tell me that I seem so confident, because that is not always the case, has not been the case through all of my life. And even now, I definitely have days where my confidence is shaken. Confidence can come in many forms. It can encompass body image, our self-esteem, sometimes our willingness to step outside our comfort zones. And all of those affect each other. So even now, at this point in my career, some days I feel like I'm on top of things and finally figuring it all out, only to find myself doubting my own judgment or comparing myself, or sometimes worrying about what other people think. Maybe at times I'm scared to try things that are new, or even have a bad hair day, which just can set me off on the wrong foot. And I think, what Even now, how can a bad hair day still get me down? Who even cares? But those things are real. And I'm sure those examples and many others are familiar to you. I am more confident than I've ever been, but it's a never-ending journey. So today we want to talk a little bit about why confidence is so important. Confidence plays a role in whether we dive into challenges or deflect them, whether we negotiate our salaries, or whether we stand up against inequities. In today's conversation, our speakers are going to talk about how we can empower ourselves or women that we know in finding confidence in ourselves as we work towards professional and personal goals. I have to tell you, this is a phenomenal slate of speakers that we have today. And our goal is that everyone will leave feeling energized with a better understanding of why confidence can at times be difficult, but also armed with some strategies to inspire us to find ourselves worthy and in turn help others see that they are enough too. So to start us out in the spirit of fearlessness, we've asked each one of today's speakers to spend a few moments sharing a story about confidence. We'd love it if you drop your own moments in the chat as well, your confidence moments, so that we can see them. And after we hear a story from each one of these speakers, we're going to ask them some questions and have a conversation. We have a great lineup with us here today. I'd love to introduce them one by one, and then I'll jump into the questions. So please join me in welcoming Bridget Cravens-Neely, who's the CEO of Big Brothers Big Sisters of Central Iowa, Jennifer Carruthers, who is the owner and creative producer of 1111 Productions, Angie Chaplin, who is the founder and owner of Mindful Leadership, and Abby Ryland, the senior associate at Jones Lang LaSalle Brokerage Incorporated. So let's give them a virtual round of applause and welcome them here today. So I'm going to start with you, Bridget, and ask you, can you share a fearless moment about a time that your confidence was low or shaken, and then what did you do?
Absolutely. Thank you so very much. And Susanna, it's such a joy to be able to be on this panel with you moderating, but also very thankful to be in the company of all these wonderful women. So my story, or my experience where my confidence was at its lowest, actually was part of my insurance career. I have a 30-year insurance career, and there was one particular moment where there was a new leader who joined the company I was working for at the time, and he just had a different perspective and a different idea of what my value was to the team, to my role, and to the company overall, and proceeded to really make me feel devalued. And it was a really tough time for me because I had always been a high performer, a hard worker, had pretty much stellar marks from a performance standpoint. And for the very first time in my career, I received a very low performance rating, and it crushed me. And the more I proceeded to find out why, the less valuable explanation he could provide. But it became very clear to me that this working relationship was just not only was it not going to work and was it not productive or effective for me, it became very toxic. And to the point that I had pretty much lost control of my emotion and where I felt myself. And we always, you hear in corporate America especially, but you hear there's no crying at work. And so in closed quarters, I would find myself tearing up, and that's definitely not my style. It was not my style. And so as the months went on and this continued to happen, I dropped weight, lost confidence in myself. My family saw a complete change in me to the point where they were extremely concerned. And finally, I just, I hit what I consider for myself bottom, and turned to my faith and prayed a lot. I also started investing in understanding my purpose and really pursuing and claiming and defining what my purpose was. And once I discovered my purpose, that is what helped rejuvenate me. That's what helped me to reclaim my confidence, in addition to the support from family and friends, and even some colleagues who stepped in and reassured me that what I was experiencing was not the norm. I needed that reassurance in order to get my feet back on solid ground. And I made a promise to myself, and I made a promise to God, that I will never let anyone ever define me outside of what my purpose is and who I am here to be. So that's my story. And ever since then, when I feel those moments of shakiness, I do what I always do, and that's basically just go to him in prayer and ask for that rejuvenation, and to just help me be able to see through the mess and not listen to the noise.
Excellent. Well, I see Jen snapping. So thank you so much for sharing that and giving us some inspiration and ideas. Jen, what about you? What's a time your confidence was shaken, and how did you unshake?
Well, I think this is something probably most of us grapple with daily. I think mostly for me, imposter syndrome comes up a lot. I think everyone, you're familiar with that feeling of just anxiousness or not experiencing success internally, despite being externally super high performing, in tangible, objective ways. And it ends up making us feel like a fraud or a phony. It doubts our abilities. I think, I was in the process, and I'm actually in the process. I mean, just right there, of opening a gay bar and event space. Most people know this, but my confidence has been challenged repeatedly as I work through this with multiple developers, different spaces. I found my dream location, submitted 3 letters of intent, on that spot. We could have preserved 40 years of queer history in this specific location, and only to feel like I was never really given a chance. And what's interesting about that is my immediate first thought was, what's wrong with me? What did I do wrong? Do I need to improve my business prospectus? Are the male business partners recognizing that me as a queer female may not be enough as it is, which is a confidence issue on its own? Are they not enough? Have I brought the right people to the table? And, that experience has really sent me back a year. I'm just now kind of getting back into it. I was feeling dejected, not worthy, not competent. And just overall, my confidence had pretty much gone away, and it was always coming back on me, which wasn't really the case. And so I'm sure most of us haven't felt worthy or deserving of something or suited for it. I've had a multitude of awards, 40 under 40. I serve on the Future Forward Council, Capital Crossroads 3.0, only the second female president of Capital City Pride since 1978. And I've taken our fundraising from 25,000 in 2017 to I've raised 1.2 million in 2.5 years. And even then, I still, struggle sometimes with my place in that arena. And but the question always comes back to, why not me? If it's not me, then who is it? But I've looked at my resume. I don't know if any of you have experienced this, and said, is this really me? I've gone over all my accomplishments. I look at what I've done, and I'm I feel like I'm looking at someone else's life that this can't possibly be me, nor am I worthy of these things. But I know there's a multitude of research about this, in that, women are more prone to imposter syndrome, not being confident compared to men, having self-doubt, thinking or misconstruing things for being incompetent, and just not feeling qualified. So yeah, I've had it come across in several ways, and I could go into just, the data that's behind it, as far as why women, don't feel qualified. It's one thing I always like to throw out there is there's a TED talk about teaching women bravery versus perfection. And it's, men will apply for jobs 60% of the time when the qualifications are just that 60% of what they are, have, versus women at 100%. And so what I challenge women is, as women here in this forum, is to go for whatever you want to go after. Don't let anyone else tell you, like Bridget was kind of talking about, don't let anyone else define what your success or what your confidence is. But when you're not feeling confident, the one thing I do is lean into being courageous. It just takes courage to get over some fear. And I think confidence is a series of experiences that build a lot of little courageous steps. So that's one thing I just recommend.
That's awesome. And I see people are chatting. So write your stories, chat responses to the speakers. We love hearing it. And thank you for sharing and being vulnerable, Jen. It's hard to deal with feelings of unworthiness, and it's even weirder to talk about them, but we all have these. And so that's why we're here today saying, let's normalize these things and figure out how we move on up out of those emotions. So Angie, let's go to you. What was a time where you really felt low, and how did you kind of overcome that?
I have to piggyback on what Jen said, because when I was invited to be a part of this panel, my first reaction was imposter syndrome, and looking at the others who are serving on here and just being asked to speak about confidence, I asked the question, why me? So I think having those micro moments to reassert ourselves and stay grounded in our confidence is truly prevalent. And what comes to mind for me in being fearless is having the courage to walk away from what no longer serves us. And for me, there have been situations, both personally and then professionally, where I questioned my confidence. The first opportunity to express that in terms of walking away was a personal relationship that was my first sober relationship. It was also the first relationship post-divorce for me. And when I started understanding that the way I was being spoken to, or the way that I was being treated, caused me to question myself and to start having some of that negative self-talk and some of those reoccurring limiting beliefs and thought patterns that I had worked so hard to overcome just along my journey of sobriety. And where I found myself grounding is in my values. And I became even more crystallized in who am I and what do I stand for? And then ensuring that the way I spoke to myself and the actions that I took were congruent with my values. It wasn't about walking away, it was about walking toward. And it allowed me to walk toward the authenticity and the integrity that keeps me grounded in my values. The same situation came up professionally when I was able to recognize that a lot of those toxic traits from a narcissistic relationship were also very prevalent and powerful in a workplace scenario. And again, having the courage to say, I value my health and my well-being more than I value fitting into the mold of what this role or what this position requires me to be. And I think we continue to find ourselves in these crossroads of choosing ourselves and choosing to walk away from situations that no longer serve us or serve our need and worthiness around confidence.
Mm-hmm. That's fabulous. I see people are actually writing down some of the lines you guys have here. We've got some good quotes going on. But the walking away from what no longer serves us is a very, very powerful choice that we can all make. So Abby, why don't we hear from you about a time that you found your confidence shaken and what you did?
Yeah, I mean, I attribute the confidence I have today to probably the lowest moment in my life, which was after a divorce. I was a single mom, And historically, I had always participated in sports that were very body focused. So I had some eating disorder challenges. And I think that coming out of that relationship, I really doubted everything about myself. Like my looks, did I look the way that I should? Was I doing enough professionally? Was I smart enough? Was I funny enough? Was I charming enough? All the things. And trying to date at that time was a real challenge because I didn't even think that I was worth dating or anything really. It was really difficult to see a former partner start to explore dating as well. And again, that I let it kind of crush me a bit. But one day I walked into a gym, a CrossFit gym, and I started participating. And it sounds really cliche, and I think people sometimes giggle about CrossFit being a cult, but I all of a sudden was picking up weights and doing these skills that I didn't know were even possible for me to do. And I think as my body developed strength, my mentality strengthened as well. My spirit got stronger. And all of a sudden I would walk out of that room believing that I could do anything. And that I was enough and I could be whoever I wanted to be. And up to that point, I don't think that I had enough, not only confidence, but I just don't think I believed when people told me, you know, you can do it. And that wasn't a thing that I was buying into. It had to come from me, and it had to come from a lot of self-reflection. And I think at that moment in time, things were so low that I had the option to stay on the path I was on, or just completely change the way that I thought about myself. And I believe that a lot of who I am today, the partner that I am to my husband, the parent I am to my children, the business owner, and the professional that I am, are attributed to having to hit that moment in my life and really make a decision that would impact everything looking ahead. And so I think now I'm able to view my body as a lot more of a tool and not just an object. I always believe the saying that what people believe about me is none of my business. And I feel really secure with who I am and who I'm going to become in the future. And that was something that I did not have up until that point in my life.
Those are beautiful words. So thank you for articulating them. Yeah, that is amazing. Each one of you talked about in a way that you had to be at a low point to really find out who you were and to understand your strength. So that's also a really interesting lesson. So let's flip the question now, and you can build on what you've said or talk about a different experience, but what builds your confidence? So what do you do now when you're feeling low or you are feeling self-doubt? What do you do to get yourself back on top of things? And I'm going to go out of order. So I'm going to start with you, Angie.
That's a great question. And I am always looking to add to my toolbox when it comes to confidence boosting activities. I am a daily yoga practitioner. So yoga is very critical in keeping me well from a holistic perspective. I also am a mindfulness teacher. So kind of doing myself what I teach others to do helps me stay grounded in those moments. And I think as harmful as I have to say social media can be, there are also very positive outlets that I can turn to help me boost my confidence, whether that's affirmations, whether that's reading, whether that's seeking resources that I know to be very positive as energy givers rather than energy takers. And it's having this toolkit before we need it, because when we're feeling very much in a crisis moment, that isn't the time to be strategic about, oh, what can I do to pull myself out of this? So some of it is being proactive and putting together our confidence boosting toolkit beforehand and knowing that that's what we have to be able to tap into at that moment.
Excellent. Bridget, what about you? What do you do when you're feeling low? How do you
So I
get
love what
yourself out?
Angie said. Yes, absolutely. I love what Angie said about the affirmations. There are a couple of things that I do, and affirmations for me tend to pop up when I least expect them, but when I most need them, and really allow me to align and hone in and pause for a minute and say, yes, okay, got it, understand. Yes, I will live in that truth. And so one of the things that I do is, as I mentioned before, extremely faith-based woman. And so being in this role as Chief Executive Officer with some nonprofit experience, but really most all of my career being in corporate, and then also being a Black woman in this space, carries a lot of weight. I'll just say that honestly, it carries a lot of weight. And so knowing that eyes are on me constantly, one of the things that I always have to do is be genuine and authentic. And we had a impromptu team meeting yesterday, and that was some of the feedback that my team gave me, was the fact that they saw my authenticity. And that's why they've chosen to follow me. And so that right there was huge for me to be able to hear from them, because that's how I want to portray myself. So one of the things I do is always do a self-check. Is if I feel like I'm out of whack, I got to do a self-assessment, self-evaluation, self-check, and say, okay, is what I'm doing aligning with my values? Am I living in my truth? Am I walking in my truth? Am I being honest? Am I showing my integrity? The other thing is there's a prayer that I say every day, every morning. It's on my calendar. First thing when I pop up, it pops up too, is I do my meditation prayer, so that I can be able to say, okay, we're going to tackle this day. Here's what we're going to focus on. You know that you have the tools and the resources and the skills and the abilities to do it. So go knock it out of the park. And that's how I walk out of every day. That's how I walk into every day, is with those two things, because it's so important to know your worth, to believe in your worth. And truly, that's where I believe confidence comes from, and we teach that to our littles constantly, is you got to love yourself, and you got to know that you're worthy, and you have to know that you are on this earth for a purpose, for a reason. Believe in that, walk in that, live in that.
You have such an amazing opportunity to be influencing little girls who need these kinds of skills, Bridget. So thank you so much for what you do. It makes such an enormous difference. I'm loving seeing the comments come in this chat. We'll come around to you and answer a few questions, but let's go to Abby. So you shared a little bit, but on a day-to-day basis, how do you kind of pick yourself up when you get knocked down?
Yeah, I find that typically my confidence is most challenged when I'm feeling overwhelmed, which, if I'm being honest, I do to myself. I have a hard time saying no. And I think that women tend to take on a lot of responsibilities. Maybe I'm also poor at delegating sometimes, which I'm, again, sure many women can relate to. So occasionally I'll find myself in a situation where I'm overwhelmed, and that's usually when I get a little bit shaky. For me, number one priority is, what are the things that have to be done, and what are the things that can wait to be done? I tend to stress out about doing everything on other people's timelines. And so sometimes I need to revisit what it looks like to me. I need to figure out if saying no is the better option in certain situations. Going to the gym for me, as I said, is a real way to kind of like empower how I feel. It helps me clear my mind. It helps me approach the day with a really positive mindset. And then I like to step away from everyone and everything occasionally and invite the quiet in. I tend to thrive in chaos, and sometimes I get caught in my own chaos. And so stepping away and taking some quiet time, and letting my mind really just chill out helps clarify things, because a lot of times it's not as bad as it seems. And I have complete control over many of the situations, again, that I sometimes invite in. And so I just need to get some clarity And quiet sometimes does that for me, which I don't have very often.
That's excellent. And I love how you talk about getting and keeping your body strong is key to keeping your mind and spirit strong. I see some things in the chat about I don't have the perfect body, but I want to tell you out there, whatever body you have is the perfect body. So flip that language around when you start criticizing this wonderful vessel that you live in and take good care of it. So thank you for bringing that up, Abby. So Jen, let's go to you. When you feel low and shaken, what do you do?
Well, in terms of the body thing, I can let you know sometimes you just gotta smack the jelly rolls. That's all you gotta do. I do it to my partner all the time. Say, look at all this sexiness, girl. But I think that failure is something that women really struggle with, right? I think women say if I fail that I am a failure. It's a part of identity. With men, it's more of it's data point. It's like, okay, how do I iterate, pivot, move on? And so for me, when I'm feeling like a failure or my confidence is low, because sometimes that feels synonymous. I definitely, like you, Abby, I punish myself with my schedule. I'm a yes person, not a whole lot of a no person. And so usually I try and do top 3 always. What are the top 3 things I need to get done on my list of about 500? Otherwise, I feel like if I don't ever do that and I don't hyper focus, nothing gets done. And then that feeling just continues to get perpetuated even further to a place that's not good. One of the new things I shared actually on a panel with Bridget that Abby hosted was my old way of getting through stress and things was drinking. So now I don't, when I'm stressed or anxious or anything like that, I sit. It's kind of like Abby talked about. I've learned to bring the quiet in. That's been very eye-opening for me to actually sit with those feelings, deal with my anxiousness or anything that I'm feeling as far as lack of confidence. I just think because we're so self-critical and, you know, one of the big ones is, you know, for me is also knowledge. I think it's hard. Most women, when you think about the application piece I talked about, 100% to apply. It's like, go out and find more knowledge if that will help you feel more secure in what you're doing. So I tend to do that. I research a little bit more if I'm feeling not as secure in whatever subject matter I'm relating to. But the biggest one I think I've been doing more is just celebrating successes, all successes, no matter how small they are. Some days my biggest success is getting out of bed. I would say that was one of my successes last week after Pride Fest, sleeping 9 hours, working 80 hours in 4 days. But like literally some days just getting out of bed and facing the day, that is confidence in and of its own. And just know that as long as you're trying, you're doing it right.
Excellent. This has been fabulous. So I'm going to move on to another good quote to tee up a question. This one from Barbara Streisand. I'm getting some good entertainers here, but she said, doubt can motivate you, so don't be afraid of it. Confidence and doubt are at 2 ends of the scale, so you actually need both. They balance each other out. So the question for you is, respond to how you actually can leverage that doubt as fuel to help you grow. And Jen, I'm going to start with you again and go backwards.
I was reading the comments, Susanna, because I just talked.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, because I was like, well, I'm going to catch up on the comments because she's not going to come back to me, obviously, because I just.
Oh my gosh, look, I just threw your confidence. So, okay, we're going to come there. I'm going to repeat the question. Sorry, I thought I was keeping it dynamic. So, Barbara Streisand, right?
Listen to Susanna.
Okay, doubt can motivate you, so don't be afraid of it. Confidence and doubt are at 2 ends of the scale, and you need both. They balance each other out. That's Barbara Streisand. So how do you leverage doubt to actually help you grow?
I think I just challenge myself when it comes to self-doubt. It kind of goes back to that thing what I said earlier, like, why not me? I mean, that's really one of my big mantras. If you want to talk about daily affirmations or, Bridget tends to go to prayer. I tend to have a lot of mantras that are essentially affirmations, building my confidence back up, my self-confidence. And that's usually what I look at self-doubt is I do a simple 3 words, why not me? And that's usually and then from there, I start building plans of why it can't be me. And then from there, I build my confidence up by basically I'm reassuring myself without getting outside validation. And that in itself is a really, I have found a strong exercise in building my confidence back to the point of not having that self-doubt anymore. Pretty simple, but it works well for me.
That's excellent. And I see somebody in the chat said, when you make a mistake, just say to yourself, how human of me. I like that. I like that one. I'm going to use that. So, okay, Jen, you can go read the chat now and I won't call on you for a while so you can relax. How about we go to Angie? How do you leverage doubt to help you grow?
One of the tools that we share with individuals seeking recovery from addiction is to actually name that doubter in our heads. So we actually name that nagging voice, and the name of my nagging voice is Jim. And I will say, when faced a situation and I start recognizing that I'm spiraling into some negative self-talk or just recognizing the icky feelings, I will say, shut up, Jim. And it sounds silly, even as I'm saying it out loud, but it gives me pause to recognize that that voice, that's not my voice. That's the voice of society. That's the voice of opinions. That's the voice of situations. That's the voice of past trauma that I am allowing to speak louder than my own authentic voice. And using shut up, Jim, it just becomes my springboard to, I don't have to stay stuck here. I don't have to listen to these voices. I don't have to stay in this situation. I can choose to acknowledge it and move away, move forward toward that end light of courage, which precedes confidence in many of these situations. So shut up, Jim, is a phrase that I have used probably more often than I might need to, but it works for me.
That's awesome. So if there's any Jims on the call, it's not
Yes,
about
I
you.
apologize.
Not about that. It's just her word. So Abby, what about you?
Yeah, I am a fairly competitive person. And I think for a long time I was competing with everybody else. And I realized that if I sort of rerouted those feelings towards myself, I could really get a lot done. It was very productive and beneficial if I sort of challenged myself, competed with myself. So I would create this dialogue in my head where I'd hear myself start saying things like, ugh, I don't think you can do that, or this is going to be a fail. It's not going to go well. And I'd actually, this is going to make me sound crazy, but I would talk back in my head very much like, hell yeah, I can. Like, I got this. Can I say a badass? I'm a badass bee. Like, and part of it too was I started saying things to my daughter, like, you can do anything and you just put your mind to it. You work hard and you can be whoever you want to be. And if I'm saying those things, I feel like I got to remind myself that I need to believe them too, because she's watching very carefully, sometimes too carefully. And so for me, it's really just taking sort of that competitive edge and routing that back to myself, and then reminding myself that I can do anything. And I believe that. And if I say it enough, it's that feeling's not going to go away. Sometimes I'm saying it and I'm maybe not buying it, and I just need to keep repeating it.
Fantastic. Bridget, how do you leverage your doubt to actually make you stronger?
So I got to respond to something Abby just said. So something I shared at a board retreat here recently was, hell yeah. So when people ask you, big brothers, big sisters, our answer is hell yeah. So I love it. It can be used interchangeably in a lot of different situations. So I'm with you on that one. I tend to get analytical, and anyone who has practiced or knows a little bit about change management understands the 5 whys. And so I will continually ask myself, why? why am I doubting myself? Get the answer. Okay, so why? And then yet again, why? Until I get to my root cause of what's generating my doubt. Because I got to understand what's the foundation, what's the basis for this self-doubt. I got to understand it, because once I can understand it, then I can do something about it. I can do something with that self-doubt, which is to be able to say, okay, maybe that's valid and I need to take a different direction, et cetera, so forth. Or that's BS. No, bump that. We're going to move that to the side. We'll deal with you another day. But really, it's just asking myself, why am I doubting myself? Why am I questioning myself? Is this legitimate, or is this just my nerves? Is this just my emotions? Is it the outside noise getting in and questioning and forcing myself to question myself and things like that? So that's a lot of what I do with that self-doubt. And then my intent is always to turn it to a let's go. Being a high school cheerleader, people say all the time, it makes sense. Yes, that's in your personality. I know this. But really being that cheerleader for myself and learning to be that cheerleader for myself. Because if I'm cheering myself on, then that means the folks around me who know me best are going to cheer me on as well, which also feeds directly into my confidence. And then that self-doubt just kind of fizzles, goes away. But always trying to get to let's go. Let's go. I'm ready.
I like
Let's
these-
go.
These short ones, badass, let's go, hell yes, okay, move. You guys are fabulous. Okay, so now I'm going to go all data on you. And Jen, you brought this up in the chat, but I had already planned this. So there's a really interesting study that was done at Harvard Business School that revealed how confidence is weaponized against women. So in short, this class that they teach say that women are regularly told to demonstrate their self-confidence as a strategy for their careers. So you hear lean in, stand your ground, fake it till you make it. But then we're also told you've got to be likable and warm. You can't be intimidating. You can't be forceful. You can't be domineering. So when women fail to achieve their career goals, leaders are very prone to attribute it to a lack of self-confidence, but we're living in this world of confusion about how we're supposed to ask. Now, on the other side, when we do demonstrate high levels of confidence through behaviors like being extroverted or being assertive, we risk overdoing it. And then that's also perceived as a lack of confidence. So you kind of think, how can we ever win? There's this almost triple standard. So I'm going to ask each of you, have you experienced this? And if so, how have you handled it? And so I think I'll go back and start with Angie and work my way inside out as well. So how do you deal with the double standard, triple standard? We don't know how to act confusion.
Right. Yes, I've experienced it. And for me, it's embracing the and. I can be strong and soft. I can be extroverted and require solitude. So first I have to embrace it for myself. So much of how we see the world is black and white. There is so much space in between black and white where two things can be true at the same time. So acknowledging it in myself is really where that begins. And instead of second guessing, I will again go back to my values. Is what I'm doing, is what I'm saying congruent with my values, so that who I'm being matches what I'm saying and what I'm doing. And if that's all aligned and integrated, then I give myself permission to keep moving forward.
Fantastic. I love the ands, and I see in the chat, people are putting heart signs up there. Abby, how do you deal with this dichotomy of I have to be this and this and this, and I can never win?
This is people my age will understand this, but Alanis Morissette wrote a song. I can't say the title of the song on this, but it very much talked about like you're a child, you're a mother, you're a sinner, you're a saint. You know where I'm going with this?
We know that song. Mhm.
Yes. And I honestly think that I heard that song and I was like, oh, yeah, like there is this dichotomy that exists. Taking kind of that concept and transitioning into real life, I do think is super challenging. But I think that women need to really assert themselves as authentic and transparent, and whatever that shows up like. I believe that especially in the workplace, men need to learn how to work with that. I think if we are trying to change the way that we approach situations or the way that we communicate to, cater to what's expected or what makes us look a certain way or what makes people feel a certain way, that we're really just doing a disservice to experiencing like real equality in the workplace. And so I think women showing up as truly themselves in any situation is the best route forward. And it's really difficult to do sometimes, and it will not always be well received. But again, it sets a different standard than when we are delicate and careful with the way that everybody feels, or the way that they believe that we should be. And so really just discovering who you are and carrying that into really every situation that you're in.
Yes, excellent. Bridget, what is your sort of take on this double standard? You have to be everything. How do you ever win?
So if anyone is familiar with Jamel Hill from the days of ESPN, she has her own podcast. And this podcast is called Jamel Hill is Unbothered. And during COVID, I discovered her podcast and was listening to her podcast and really started asking myself, what does it mean to be unbothered? And what does it mean for me to be unbothered? And I feel like I'm at that point now where I have simply become unbothered because I'm not trying to fit the double standard anymore. I'm not trying to live up to what other people's expectations are for me. The only person I know how to be is me. And so because of that, that's the best version of me that you're always going to get. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I am saying that I have to be my authentic self and show up in places. Yes, occasionally, yes. Do you have to flex your style? Of course you do. Because if you want people to hear your message, you got to meet them where they're at as well, right? When you're in these different spaces. And being in the work that I'm in, being in the work that Jen's in, really trying to, we kill what we eat, right? As far as we spend what we earn being in the nonprofit world. And so but I always have to show up as me. I can't show up as anybody else, because every time I show up as somebody else or what somebody is expecting me to show up as, I'm failing already. And I can't do that anymore.
So somebody texted me, one of my friends texted and said, her company blocks the chats. And she said, what are people saying? So here's an example for people who can't see what Bridget just said. Preach, Ms. Bridget. One says, yes, you are you. Yes, I love that you always show up as you, Bridget. So these chats are really awesome. So on to you, Jen. What's your take on how you deal with this weaponization of self-confidence for women?
For me, it's one thing I've learned in the last couple of years specifically is kind of back to what Angie had said. It's walking away when you don't feel valued anymore, or that you're not being valued. That's a big one. I think as women, we continue to try and to prove ourselves, right? It's like we lean in harder, at least I do, when someone starts doubting or you have this double standard. Well, I can outperform and show you. And it's like, why do I have to do all this extra to further validate my worthiness compared to maybe a male counterpart? And even sometimes for me, for female counterparts, when you look this gay, I mean, it is what it is. I get called sir like 3 times a day. And so there's like that struggle, that intersectional piece that, that Bridget touched upon, just being a Black woman on top of it. There's a lot that goes into being a butch woman that looks like this. But I think it's having that power and inner strength to know your value, walk away, but also surround yourself with the right people. And I'm not saying people that sit there and praise you all day. You're real people. Just ask my fiance. She will give it to me whether I want to hear it or not. It's not always, she's always in my corner, but she keeps it real with me. And I think that is very, very important when you're navigating these spaces, that you have those group of people that they celebrate you, but they also challenge you. And so I've made a more concerted effort in my lovely 40 plus years now to find folks like that in my circle that really help foster that when maybe I don't have it within me, because I think we struggle with that energy sometimes too. So.
Well, amazing. I'm now going to give you a moment. I'm wanting each one of the speakers to kind of think about what we've heard today and be ready to share one quick takeaway. I'll give you a couple of minutes for the takeaway each. But while you're thinking, I'll tell you a couple of the questions that came into the chat I want to respond to. One of them was, what do you do to manage comments when other people cut you down or question you when you're feeling really strong? And one piece of advice I'll give you, since you guys were pulling Alanis into this, is if you haven't listened to Sia's song Titanium, that's the one to boost you, because she says, shoot me down, but I get up, I am titanium. And it is just this phenomenal song that will remind you, let the bullets ricochet off of you. Do like Bridget says, are these really valid? If they're gifts, I'll take them, but if they're not, they can just bounce right off of me. You can have them back. Another question that came in was when to leave versus when to give up. And I don't know that I have the answer here, but if you guys have any thoughts for each other about when to go versus hanging in there, chat those now as I ask our speakers for some of their last thoughts. Okay, so our takeaways, I'm going to go in the order that we did the first time. And so Bridget, let's go to you. What wisdom do you want to leave the group with?
Pretty much what I've shared before, and that, well, here's my mantra. I'll share that. Is that perception is the opportunity to learn the truth. And we've talked a lot about living in your truth. If you don't know your truth, how is anybody else going to know your truth? And so perception is not always reality. And I think we as a human race have to accept the fact that perception is not always reality. It is truly our opportunity to learn the truth and then walk in that truth, receive that truth, live that truth.
Excellent. Love that. Let's go to you, Jen.
For me, this is a big one. I kind of briefly touched upon it, is lean into being courageous, not necessarily confident. Courage is more about your ability to take action. Like I said, confidence is typically a process that we build up over time. And so when you're not feeling so confident, look at small opportunities, build the routine of taking courageous steps, so that confidence just starts coming more easily to you, but you also are just reaffirming yourself every day by taking, and it can be as simple as speaking up in a meeting, sending a chat. Like I know there's a lot of people here where they don't know if they want to say something for fear of, would it not be in the general consensus or someone might judge what I say. So I would just say every day, find little ways to be courageous. And if you're not having confidence at this time, I think over that time, you'll start building up that confidence naturally till you'll arrive at this moment where you feel it. And it's because it's been an experience that you have really contributed a lot of time and effort towards. So it just comes more natural.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we hear a lot. Confidence is a muscle that can be built, or resilience is a muscle that can be developed. So great, great wisdom. Angie, what are your takeaways and thoughts for the group?
Well, I need to add another song to everyone's playlist, and that is Rise by Katy Perry. And there is a line in there where she says, "Oh, ye of so little faith." And at times that's a directive to myself of not having faith in me. But at times it's like what Jen said, why not me? I have the faith that I need to succeed. But my final words of wisdom goes back to this understanding of staying grounded in our own truth and our own authenticity. And that's really acknowledging the invitation to lead ourselves first. So to believe in who we are, what we stand for, by acknowledging and grounding in our values, then we're able to move forward with confidence and courage.
Fabulous. And Abby, what about you?
Yeah, I had made just a short add to the comments earlier, but I think the biggest sort of takeaway for me is fear is a liar. And so whether you define that little voice in your head that's negative as, you know, your own voice, as was it Jim? Or anything else, I think reminding yourself that fear is a liar. You're going to tell yourself things that are not true. You're going to diminish your capabilities sometimes. Sometimes other people are doing it, but at the end of the day, those are all just voices in your head. And as long as you can really control your narrative, your own narrative, you'll be headed in the right direction. And I also just want to note, like, never ever apologize for being who you are. I think women tend to apologize a lot, way too much. And a lot of times it is, oh, I was really passionate. I'm sorry I spoke that way. Or, oh, I'm sorry I approached it this way. I'm sorry I said this, you know, whatever it is. I'm sorry I made you uncomfortable. Sometimes it's okay to just knock the sorries off and be who you are and be totally cool with that.
Knock the sorries off, stop shitting yourself. Fear is a liar. We could just do these one-liners all day. Hopefully you've written some of them down and someone's going to compose a song that's a composite of all of this. But I like your playlist ideas. I'm seeing a lot of those coming up. Well, before I turn it over to Stacy, I just want to say, Bridget, Jen, Angie, and Abby, this has been a really amazing way to spend a lunch hour. It's been a real big shot in the arm for me and hopefully for the rest of our audience about their confidence. We're not all born confident. Society puts a lot of baggage on us. Our families put a lot of baggage on us. There are things that we have to overcome in order to embrace our true and authentic selves and feel strong. You guys have given us some amazing wisdom. Thank you for sharing. And thanks to the audience for being here. And now I'm turning it back over to the awesome Stacy.
Thanks, that was great. I think I was taking some notes and found lots of little tidbits that are good reminders to keep in. So thank you guys for being vulnerable and sharing very relatable stories for all of us today. So if you enjoyed this conversation, we encourage you to join us for our final Fearless Focus on October 10th, where we'll talk about risk taking. So it'll sure to be another really great conversation. And of course, we would love to have you join us for our in-person Fearless celebration on Thursday, November 1st from 10 to noon at the Des Moines Marriott downtown here. General admission tickets won't go on sale until October, but if you're interested in a corporate table opportunity, you can go to our website, fearlessbr.com. We'll drop that link in the chat, and you can inquire about those and we'll get you all the information so you can bring a group of folks to come celebrate in person with us. If you've got story ideas, normally you can reach out to Emily Barsky, but like I said, she's out on her honeymoon enjoying time away. So please reach out to Nicole Grundmeyer if you have ideas or feedback about today's conversation. We are locally owned and operated business, and your support is always, as a sponsor, helpful. And as we continue to do work like this, you can reach out to Emily Schultz if you're interested in advertising and sponsorship opportunities. And finally, we want to leave you with a final quote and a call to action. Confidence isn't optimism or pessimism, and it's not a character attribute. It's the expectation of a positive outcome. So I challenge you to expect positive outcomes. The next time you feel doubt or fear, hold your head high, lean in and be courageous, Jen, and flip the story. How could this all work out? And know that even in the moments of self-doubt, it is a path to growth. So now's your time. Be a badass, whatever you choose. We hope you'll do it and be more confident and fearless in your efforts to continue empowering Iowa women. We'll hope you consider sharing a time that you decided to flip the script and expect positive outcomes. So email us your stories and we'd love to hear them. So have a great day. Thanks for joining us.